Okay, we're going to deal for a second with kind of an issue that might seem a little dumb for many reasons, but I think it does fall under our theology and society topic. Society and theology, I think, is the order I put it in. But people might have noticed that Tony Dungy, who's an NBC football analyst, has been getting slammed for agreeing with Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Nick Foles that Christ or something helped him win the Super Bowl. And people are saying, well, that's not a very professional way to behave on air. You're not supposed to bring your opinions into on-air analysis on football. And that's I think sometimes that could be a fair criticism. But let's remember that the fucking game was over. And Tony Dungy does offer in many of his appearances on the network, his regular appearances. He's the regular analyst on NBC football. He offers pretty good stuff, and his analysis is exactly the type of stuff you would expect from a Super Bowl winning coach. Remember, he won the Super Bowl, I think, in 2005 with the Colts, and he was Peyton Manning's. He was the guy who brought Peyton Manning all the way to the top for the first time. So I think that Tony Dungy, taking a moment to editorialize and say, well, I also think that, Christianity is good for, XYZ and winning the Super Bowl and things like that. I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Philadelphia fan by any means. So looking at the side, I think, no, it's not a question. It's not an opinion that you would typically find on a pro football analysis show. But first of all, football is entertainment. It's not like you need to restrict the football analysis from any sort of outside themes that can come in. Okay, now within reason. You don't want people talking about having orgies while they're talking about touchdowns or something. So within reason, I think that talking about something like that is appropriate, even if it's just an opinion and it's a religious belief that he's expressing out there, and that's just talking about it on its own. So yeah, I think Tony Dungy, some of this criticism I see here. Actually, on this one, they didn't even include any of the critics, but he was just slammed on Twitter. Let's see if we can find it on Twitter. I didn't intend this to be very long, but that's fine. So you have the other guy, Steph Stradley. She deleted her tweet, but she said, so then she complains that she was, because Dungy share. So I'll just share this screen. I usually don't share Twitter because I think Twitter is crap, and I use Twitter usually to find other people's stuff. But here we are. So he said, why would you find it hard to believe that the Holy Spirit could speak to Nick Foles just as much as a coach could speak to him? If he credited a coach for saying, stay calm and be confident, that's good. But if he tells me Christ says that to him, I should report it. So Stephanie Stradley says, I don't. Sure, you should report his words. And now because you quote tweeted a part of a larger conversation to strangers, I'm going to be a Christian attacked by the Christians. Just how Twitter is with nuanced topics. I wish I had said nothing. Peace be with you. So she attacked his behavior on screen, and then she gets touchy about how now people are attacking me. Well, you didn't have to say anything. Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl. You didn't, Steph Stradley. You're a woman. Women don't win Super Bowls. You interview people who win Super Bowls. Uh, that is until some sort of something else happens to the league. But I want to compare this. Okay, so obviously he said, "Oh, the Holy Spirit could have spoken through this guy, Nick Foles, who won the Super Bowl for the Eagles." And there's an interesting story, and I think it was wholly appropriate because whether you like it or not, when the Eagles went up to that podium at the end of that game, both Doug Peterson, the coach, and Nick Foles, and I think a number of other players, they talked about how Christianity was their motivating factor. So the coach is a big Christian, the quarterback is a big Christian. People are just going to have to deal with it. I'm not a Christian, but I remember watching Tebow talk all the time about Christianity. I thought was tiresome, so I kind of ignored it. Jeremy Lin was also a huge Christian. Still is a huge Christian. But that wasn't really the focus of most of the talk about Jeremy Lin. Most of it was about how he was Asian. People just ignored the fact that he was a very fanatic. I mean, I don't know about fanatic was the word, but he's a huge Christian. And then you have DeMarcus Ware, and you have a lot of these athletes are major Christians, and I think Benjamin Watson this year was doing a lot of activism against abortion. So activism in sports, Christianity in sports, I think is not going to disappear. And for people were complaining for a long time that people that the people were complaining about the fact that fans are objecting to Colin Kaepernick bringing politics onto the field with his protest. Okay, so if Colin Kaepernick can bring politics onto the field in his protest, even though he is sticking his thumb in the eyes of many viewers, including by using the pig socks and wearing a Fidel Castro T-shirt, I don't care what the excuse is, then Tony Dungy can be a friggin', Jesus Christ superstar guy. It doesn't matter. If you want it one way, then you have to take it the other way. Tony Dungy is a Super Bowl winning coach and an analyst on a football network. He doesn't need people dictating to him every single comment that he can talk about, especially because it wasn't aimed at anybody. It wasn't critical of anybody. It was a belief. Now, if you were really consistent in your beliefs, those of you that are attacking Tony Dungy's whatever the hell it is that he did, which I don't see anything special about it. He says NBC pays me to express my opinion, and it was my opinion that Nick Foles would play well because his Christian faith would allow him to play with confidence, and that he's a good quarterback. I think I was right on both sides. So on both counts. So the same people have been calling Jamel Hill this amazing figure because of her quote unquote courage at tweeting against Donald Trump and speaking out against him in the media or whatever. Now, she doesn't necessarily do it on the job all the time, but one of the things that she said was that she wants people to boycott the NFL, I believe, because they wouldn't hire Kaepernick back. So she wanted people to mount a boycott campaign against sporting events that were being televised by the network that she works for. That's unprofessional. That's undermining the very organization that you work for. And unfortunately, when you sign that contract to work for a company, I mean, sure, your religious beliefs could also be to some degree. You can't just go into your workplace and try to proselytize people to your religion. But likewise, you can't bring your political beliefs and shove them in people's faces. I try not to do that at my job. I really do try to keep to myself in terms of that. We'll chat and joke and whatever. Sometimes politics will come up. If there's a group of people talking about it, I usually don't participate because I don't think that the workplace is if you're in a non-political field, the workplace isn't the best place to talk about it. But Tony Dungy was commenting about something that happened and people talked about with regard to the game, with in regard to the Eagles. The Eagles were talking about Christianity, so he can comment on it too. It's totally relevant. Jamel Hill is she took Sports Center, which was the classic show that aggregated all of the great highlights from around sports every day, and she turned the show into a steaming turd of politics and opinion. So those of you that are complaining about Tony Dungy and Christianity and whatever, look, I mean, you can change the channel. It only happened for like a second. Uh, the Super Bowl's over, so you don't have to see Tony Dungy until probably September or something, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he does anything on the off season, but I mean, get over it. It's over. Jamel Hill, on the other hand, she ran ESPN to the shitter. And there's a whole article about why she claimed that I have in the description, why she claimed that she decided to leave, and how she felt that Sports Center was not the proper forum to talk about sports. So suddenly she had a change of heart because after months of her behaving like she's the conscience of ESPN. ESPN realized that their conscience is a pile of Benjamins, and they probably hinted to her, hey, we can't fire you, so here's another gig, and we'll give you a little more money or something. There's probably something in the. I mean, I'm not going to say that there is, but there was probably some sort of deal worked out that both sides found amenable, and that's why she moved on. She didn't have a change of heart in terms of being able to talk politics on SportsCenter. Why would she have changed her mind about it? Her notoriety just it accelerated. Nobody gave a shit about ESPN Sports Center before she did all that crap with Trump. The show sucked. It was garbage. Nobody watches Sports Center anymore. And she was behaving also in the article. She says, "Oh, it's the flagship classic, highlight show and whatever." And yeah, it was classic when other people. Stuart Scott was on it. I actually didn't like Stuart Scott, but I actually didn't like many of the people on Sports Center. I thought that they were, obnoxious idiots. My favorite ESPN show was um, probably Pardon the Interruption, to be honest with you. And I probably wouldn't enjoy it today, but it was still better than Sports Center. So that's about it. Please leave your comments below. I don't really care if people inject, a moment of religion in sports. For me, I can just choose to ignore it, and people remark about all sorts of crap during the game. And another thing, imagine if they would have ejected if Nick Foles had given tribute to Allah or to let's say to Buddha or something, or to to if he would have said some sort of Rastafari declaration. Well, if they would have said something about that, then the conversation would have been it would have been spun around on them. They would have said, well, you're a bunch of bigots. How can you criticize Islam? How can you criticize Rastafari? How can you it's all nonsense. They're just people that are insecure, so they attack Christianity. Again, I'm not a Christian, not an Eagles fan. It's a stupid issue. So talk to you guys later. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your comments below and subscribe.